I'm Jennifer Myatt with Lexington's Division of Environmental Services. I am out here on this windy day today with Chris Holtzclaw, who is an environmental inspector with the Division of Water Quality. Good morning.
Morning.
We are out here, we are going to talk about fiber logs or wattles. So if you can give us a rundown of what those are.
Yes, Jennifer, the fiber logs are a device used, a BMP, an alternative to silt fence that we use on site to prevent erosion and sediment control during the building process of a lot of commercial and residential sites.
So tell me how they prevent erosion first.
Well, when they're installed, and first and foremost, we'll talk about the names. A lot of folks know them as wattles or coconut rolls. They go by a lot of different names, but they're all the same thing. It's essentially a 6 to 10 inch tube with a organic material such as straw, coconut fiber, or compost that's laid in place on site to prevent drainage problems with sediment leaving the site before what we consider stabilization is put in place.
So what do we need to do about installing these on the site? Like, what's the proper way to do it and everything?
That's a good question. Installation generally starts depending on the site. You take a larger site that has a turf mat, turf blanket in place. They can actually be laid on top of the turf mat and blanket. They're staked in about every 3 foot apart, and at the end we stake it in no further or no less than 12 inches from the end of the log. On smaller slopes, home sites such as what's behind us here, we generally dig a trench, a 2 to 3 inch trench with a rounded shovel. What that allows is you're essentially creating a bed for the coconut roll or wattle to lay in. We stake it in the same way, about 3 foot apart, with the ends overlapping at times to prevent any wash through, any undermining that could happen. That is the easiest way. Some alternatives include putting a stake on the downslope side of it to help on steeper slopes. That just reinforces the straw wattle to hold it in place and keep it from what we consider floating up if there's a situation where there's a large rain that could essentially float the wattle off the ground.
So when is a good time to use a wattle on a construction site?
Suggested good times for the wattle, we consider it a temporary BMP. In other words, it will last a long while with proper maintenance. You don't want to install it on what we consider high traffic areas where you're going to have deliveries made, vehicles crossing over it. Though it's made to have vehicles driven over top of, the issue you run into is they start to break down. Obviously they're organic, they decompose. We had some issues with them busting open because of the netting material. So in general terms, we like to see them after the final grade is in place before sod or stabilization. At that point, they can be put in place for a 2 to 3 week span, be pulled after sod arrives or stabilization is in place, and then they can be removed at that point and the site should hold itself.
So what kind of sites work best for these?
Wattles work best on what we consider smaller sites with not a steep slope, I guess you could say. Large sites will require a silt fence where you have a little more backing. Home sites that are finished up that with a small slope, generally semi-flat, are the best places to use them. They can be used on larger sites with the addition of silt fence as a double barrier, if you want to call it. That's the best place to use them, but we generally like to see them on smaller slopes, home sites, and finished projects as they're ending the duration.
Well, thank you for joining us out here today, and I hope that you learned something interesting about wattles today.